go. All right, it is 7:02 p.m. on Monday, September 20th. I'd like to call this meeting of the Lansing City Council to order and ask that the clerk please call the roll.
Councilmember Betts.
Present.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Here.
Councilmember Garza. Councilmember Hussein.
Here.
Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Spatafor.
Present.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Here.
Councilmember Wood.
Here.
There are 7 members present at quorum. Councilmember Garza is absent, and I'm told he had requested an excuse.
That's correct, yes. Before we begin, I just want to remind folks that face coverings are required by all council members, city officials and staff, and members of the public at all city council and committee meetings. We appreciate your compliance with this request. Before our Pledge of Allegiance, I ask, are there any folks that members of the council or the mayor's office would like us to keep in our thoughts during our moment of meditation? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we all keep in our memory the family of Raynar Edgar Jones. Mr. Jones passed away recently. He was one of the first black master plumbers in Lansing and a contractor. He worked for GM for over 30 years before retiring. He employed a number of other plumbers in his business, JL&O and Jones Plumbing. He also was very involved with the Capital City Sports Track Club, the Southside Panthers football, Breakers football, and other things. So I hope we will keep him in his family in our thoughts and minds.
Thank you. Council members? All right, I ask that you please, during our moment of meditation, keep the Jones family in your thoughts. Please rise.
You have for your approval the printed council proceedings of August 23rd.
Vice President Hussein.
Sure, I would move the printed council proceedings for August 23rd as presented.
Proceedings have been moved. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the approval of the proceedings from August 23rd, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries.
And we are to special ceremonies. We have a tribute in recognition of National Hispanic American Heritage Month.
Sure, it's my understanding also that the mayor has prepared his own declaration, but Mr. Vice President, if you'd like to assist the mayor. And while we're getting set up, I just want folks to know items 10, 11, and 12 on the agenda did not make it out of committee last week, so they will not be considered this evening. You can still address them on the council public comment section, but they will not be voted on tonight. If our friends here celebrating National Hispanic American Heritage Month would like to join us up at the podium, we greatly appreciate that and welcome you. Yeah, there's a camera right there, so.
Okay. Let me first say that this was incredibly, I talked to Councilman Garza not too long ago, and he was very, very disappointed that he couldn't be here tonight. This was incredibly important to him, and so I am absolutely honored to be able to present this on behalf of the Lansing City Council, and obviously in recognition of just the tremendous contributions that Hispanic Americans have made, not just in our country and throughout the state, but right here in the city of Lansing. If you're not aware, it's a little odd speaking forward. We're usually speaking to the crowd. If you're not aware, National Hispanic Heritage Month actually kind of got its start in the 1960s. In the 1980s, we really did, I think, justice by the Hispanic community by actually moving to recognize it over the course of an entire month, September 15th through October 15th. What followed was really kind of a local effort, and we saw a number of communities throughout the country pass resolutions of their own recognizing not only the contributions of Hispanic Americans throughout the country, but also those right there in their own communities. And so I think it's fitting that today, we are recognizing, again, as a council, we're recognizing the contributions of Hispanic Americans to, obviously, this country with a laser focus, a hyper focus, really, on those folks that have done so much for our community. Obviously, we think of nationally, we think of folks like Sonia Sotomayor. We think of Cesar Chavez. As a history teacher, I think of Lin-Manuel Miranda. But locally, we have all been positively impacted by the folks such as Tony Benavidez and Carmen Benavidez, who really need no introduction. by folks like Delma Lopez. The fact that, this woman, I know so many know, obviously the contribution she made, but, co-founder of the Crystal Ray Community Center in the 1960s. We also had, her serve on the Lansing Housing Commission for, I think, some 25 years. Many, yeah. Guillermo Lopez, school board member for nearly 2 decades, just a tremendous community advocate, police board commissioner, and of course, folks like Gina and Al Salas. Al Salas, of course, being a one-time migrant who would ascend to become a small business owner. And anybody that knows Al knows that he is one of the most pure, kind-hearted community advocates that you could possibly know. So again, it is, I think, long past due that we introduce this recognition, and it is an absolute honor. I just want to read a small part of the resolution that my council colleagues are going to be asked to support tonight. The first piece is the fourth whereas, where it says, whereas each year, Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the histories, cultures, and contributions of American citizens whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas the city of Lansing is home to 118,000 citizens that each contribute to the growth, diversity, and strength of our community. Of the 118,000, 12.4% identify as Hispanic or Latinx, along with enriching our community through culture. The Hispanic and Latin community has enhanced the economy of Lansing through progress in business, law, healthcare, agriculture, and many others. Be it resolved that the Lansing City Council is proud to hereby proclaim September 15th, 2021 through October 15th, 2021 as National Hispanic Heritage Month. Before asking Lorenzo to maybe say a few words, I would ask that my colleagues support a motion to approve. Thank you.
That is a proper motion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the resolution recognizing National Hispanic American Heritage Month, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
And actually, why don't we let the mayor speak first, then we'll let Lorenzo speak.
Well, thank you, Councilman. Thank you to everyone behind me. Like Councilman Hussein, it's weird to be speaking to the camera and not everybody behind me, but this is for you all. I don't want to repeat what he said, so I'm not going to. He spoke very eloquently. I had a conversation with Lorenzo Lopez not too long ago, and we talked about doing really a big deal about Hispanic Heritage Month, because it is a big deal. And as you all know, if you know Lorenzo, you know he had grand plans. I was very supportive of his grand plans, but certainly with COVID and other things, we wanted to have a grand party, but we didn't want to have a grand spreader event. So we're going to hold that until next year, but we really do want to have a grand celebration of our Hispanic heritage. I want to agree with everything Councilman Hussein, all the names he mentioned. I'll add in Dr. Nino Rodriguez, former principal, who I know was on your list. You always forget somebody when you list people. I also want to add in Clara Martinez, who's a teacher, my daughter's teacher at Everett High School for dance, and the best dance teacher anywhere, but also the co-chair of our Arts Commission. Saying that, we have a few more people we're going to honor who are here that I have some certificates for. I also have a resolution declaring this Hispanic Heritage Month. In my infinite wisdom, I left it in my office, and normally that's okay, because I could run up to the 10th, or I could run down to the 9th floor from the 10th floor and get it, and I can't do that here. But I will get that to you, Lorenzo. I will bring it to your home or get it to you. But we do have a very nice resolution written up where I will proclaim, I have proclaimed this month to be Hispanic Heritage Month as well, in addition. So you not only get it once, you get it twice, because council passed it and I declare it, so it's tremendously important. So I want to let Lorenzo speak a little bit, if that's okay with the council president, and then I've got a few certificates that I'd like to give out in honor of some people that I think you all here on council and all of those watching on TV will recognize all of these names.
Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council, thank you on behalf of the people that are here in our community for giving us this opportunity to share with the city of Lansing, the capital of the state of Michigan and the United States. There are many organizations in our city of Lansing who have done outstanding work pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and currently continuing to service all the different communities within what is called the Latino community. We are not a monolithic community. We have different connections to our state and to our country. So today I would like to recognize some of those organizations who have done outstanding work in our community and in the general community that improves the quality of life of all the citizens of Lansing. I'd like to first to start out with La Cooperación, which is a musical group. They began in 1980. They have been here over 49 years, providing Mexican Latino music to this city and to this state. But most importantly, they get paid for their gigs, but they're also recognized when there's a major funeral in our community that people need money or fundraising, they're there. Any kind of fundraiser, any kind of issue where unfortunately money may not be available, they will do their best, free of time, free to everybody. So they're recognized as not only as a band in terms of their musicianship, but also they're willing to give to the community. So I'd like to bring up Ruben Herrera. And I'd like to also bring up a local promoter of Latino bands in Lansing and Michigan, Corina Salinas, please. The mayor will present you both.
La Corporación, right? Yep, correct. I think this is the one for you. It's for the band leader. For the band leader, yeah. Congratulations, thank you very much. We'll do one of these here. Thank you.
Next, we have Maria Star Van Coor, who is the president of the local LACLA chapter, Labor Council for Latino American Advancements, which is a national organization housed in Washington, D.C. They tirelessly work for many years to do what? To get registered people to vote, voter education, and also scholarships to high school students here in the Lansing area so that they can attend universities. Maria, LACLA, there you are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Next, Voces de la Comunidad, Voices of the Community, Sol Garcia, another organization that has been doing unbelievable work with a variety of organizations will be here today to not only work with the Latino community in general, but also with the undocumented. During the height of the pandemic, we would all send all these packages of all the necessities that they would need because they do live in the shadows, folks. They're here. We may not see them, but we know they're here. Through their organization, they would get all the things needed and they would distribute them. At the height of the pandemic, they would have outdoor events, including bingo, with prizes and food, free, no cost to them. They are continuing to do our good work, so I thought it would be important for Voces de la Comunidad. We should give them a hand, shouldn't we? We shouldn't be just sitting here. Everyone should. Thank you so much. Next, another one that I've worked with, so many years, Teresa Rosado, Casa de Rosado. Is it a Latino, Latinx, Chicano, Mexican-American, Hispanic, Latino art gallery, and LGBTQ, and all the marginal community have been at her event. We're preparing now for a major Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead event on October the 30th, and she definitely deserves recognition. Next, another, if you haven't heard of Cafecito Cafe on Facebook, you really need to. Everything that's going on in our community, politically, socially, culturally, historically, and in terms of business, you will find on that page. Cafecito Caliente promotes our community, the general community, makes our community aware of all sorts of issues relative to our community. They have over 1,000, almost 2,000 viewers. Sain Benavides controls that where there he is. Thank you so much. Next is Ethan Schmidt from Planned Parenthood. He has worked diligently with Voces de la Comunidad in making sure that those people who don't have access to health care, who need it desperately, in a variety of issues, working with the total Latino community as well, and we thought he deserved and merits recognition. everybody knows Oscar Castañeda, I think. You should. He messaged me. He right now might be on his way here, but he was in court in Detroit. What was he doing there? He was advocating on behalf of undocumented in their case, in a serious case in the city of Detroit. So he may or may not be here. Should he arrive, we could do it. But I want to make sure that Action of Greater Lansing, which is an organization that works diligently with the undocumented here in Lansing and around our state, Oscar Castañeda. Give him a hand, please. And lastly, when you use the word Latino, the word Hispanic, the word Chicano, the word Latinx, Spanish-speaking, or even Mexican-American, a lot of us who are Americans don't really know what that word means. They do not have an understanding of who that really includes in our great state and in our great nation. So what I'm going to do today, quickly, because I know you're busy, I'm going to mention a country, and if there's a representative from that country, to please come forward, as many as I can. Like the mayor said, we try to work on issues and get this done, and we went to Plan B, so I did as much as I could. Argentina. Come on. Latina. Anybody from Bolivia? ¿Hay alguien de Bolivia? No hay nadie. No one from Bolivia. Chile? Colombia. Well, she's probably on her way too. I got a friend coming in. Costa Rica. Cuba. Andale. Que viva Cuba. Dominican Republic. Ecuador. Oscar's from Guatemala. He would be representing himself. Obviously, he's not here. Honduras. Mexico. Ooh, there's millions. We know that. Nicaragua. Panama. ¿Dónde está Nicaragua?
No.
Él es de México.
Oh, Mexico.
Paraguay. Puerto Rico. Thank you. Peru. Nino told me to tell you, he's outside in Detroit at the moment. If he could get here on time, he's originally from Spain, and that would be Dr. Rodriguez, but since he's not here, Uruguay, you've heard of Uruguay. Venezuela, andale. The United States of America. You may not know this, but United States is the second largest Latino nation in the world, and the Spanish language is the de facto second language of the United States, right? Lastly, Brazil. We include Brazil because they do speak Portuguese, but in the United States, where we live, where we're from, and we support our constitutions, represents all these Latinos. Every single one of them we use in the United States, Latinos. And I wanted to make sure everybody knew who we are as a group in the entire country. On behalf of this group, I want to thank the Honorable Mayor. I want to thank the Honorable Council people for allowing us, and I work with many of you, and I miss all of you. You know that. Thank you for allowing us to do this. But hold on one second, because I need to get some pictures with all of the people who got a recognition, with the mayor and the council president. Is that allowable? Over there, Robert Killips, who you know is my brother-in-law. Those who receive recognition, come over here to get over there, pictures, and then we'll get some pictures of the rest of you.
Lorenzo, please make your way over for the pictures, please. Thank you.
I was corrected a minute ago. In my definitions, I did not mention Mexican Americans because we're all here. We're all here. And some people still use the word Chicano from the 1960s on to now. So we wanted you to know that as well. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We are now to comments by council members on the city clerk.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to mention and just make a comment today. We all know about the tragic double murder that happened recently where a mother and her mother were murdered, and the children for a while were reported missing. Pleased to say that the children have been recovered, of course, the 3-year-old and the 4-year-old. The 6-year-old boy, I think, is out of the hospital. But the Healing Hearts Project with John Edmonds and Rena Risper have really stepped up to gather, clothing, money for this family, this grandfather who's now, has custody of this 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and 6-year-old. And so I'd like to just, thank them for one. Thank also Delisa Fontaine, who's the director of the Neighborhoods and Citizen Engagement Office for the city of Lansing. She has graciously allowed her office to be the repository of, clothing, diapers, shoes. The 6-year-old was left without shoes because they took them as evidence. And so what I'm asking is that, if you have in your heart materials, diapers, food, formula for the children, clothing for the children, or you would like to make a donation in a gift card from Meyer or whatever, please drop it off at the Letts Center at the Department of Neighborhood and Citizens Engagement. It's a tragic thing, and they're also trying to find, and we're working with the city of Lansing and other community groups to find them housing. They can't go back to the place where the incident happened, and so the grandfather is trying to find housing for him and the 3 folks that he's now have to take care of. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Spitzley. Any other members of council? Councilmember Dunbar, then Hussein.
Thank you. I'm also very disturbed and very sad about the shootings, not just a couple days ago, but even today. It's not stopping, and I really am looking forward to the county signing off on the advance peace process, because that is the only thing that I foresee actually making a dent in the social networks that are involved in the retaliatory gun violence and reaching these folks where they are. I also want to, on that note, say how disappointed I was that Sheriff Rigglesworth went around to different communities to garner support against our Ingham County prosecutor for taking steps to reduce the racial inequities that are caused by certain felony firearm add-ons to charges that would already result in incarceration, but unduly affect Black members of our community by charging them automatically with an extra 2-year add-on sentence when they have a firearm even near them in the commission of a crime, whether that firearm was used in the commission of a crime. And I specifically want to say that I support Jesse Gregg, the mayor of East Lansing, and the East Lansing City Council for having the courage to bring Sheriff Rigglesworth into a public forum to discuss publicly what he was saying behind the scenes to those who signed on to that letter. I would actually appreciate having him here to discuss that. I would not sign on to that letter, but I would love to hear the rationale that was used, because there is no proof whatsoever that that law, having been in effect since it was put into effect, I think in '76, has actually done anything to reduce gun violence at all. The only thing that we can point to that has resulted from that is a very, very disproportionate incarceration rate for Black and brown members of our community. So I'm very sad that our mayor signed on to that. I wish that he hadn't, given specifically that we just allocated, I didn't vote for it, but we just allocated the $300,000 to look at ways to reduce racial disparities. And the reason I didn't support that at the time was because it didn't have an actual mechanism to do that. And here's a policy that actually does it, and to come out in favor of the sheriff against the prosecutor on that, I think is very disappointing. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Hussein.
Sure. I certainly am, I kind of want to piggyback on some of Councilwoman Spitzler's comments. I found out about the young man that was murdered on Hunters Ridge, the 3900 block of Hunters Ridge, 17-year-old kid, at about 2:37 this afternoon. I found out at about 4 p.m. And I was still at school, where I teach kids from the southwest side of the city and the west side of the city. And I got to be honest with you, I was incredibly, incredibly angry. When I got here tonight, sat down, and Councilwoman Wood and Councilwoman Spitzley were both talking about that, and they were angry as well, angry and frustrated, disappointed, I think it's important for folks to know. During council comments, we often talk about the great things that are going, on in and around, I should say, the city. And the reality is there are some fantastic, fantastic things, things that we should be very proud of, and we certainly should be trumpeting. That being said, I want you all to know that as your representatives, we care deeply. These are the things that keep us up at night. These are the things that have us questioning what we're doing, respectively, collectively, and in various roles, myriad roles that we fill in this community. As a teacher, I'm frustrated, right? It has me questioning what I'm doing with my programming to supplement my curriculum. It has me questioning what I'm doing in terms of engaging family. It has me questioning what I'm doing with regards to working with my staff, working with my administration to make sure that we're wrapping our arms around these kids and their families, and that we're helping them to some different circumstance. With regards to my role as a neighborhood leader, community advocate that's part of a number of coalitions, it has me questioning what we're doing. What are we missing, right? Because I can promise you we're working hard, but what are we missing? And then as a city council member, and absolutely Advanced Peace is part of it, but what are we doing to holistically address the issues that we know are systemic in our community? What are we doing to clean up our parks? What are we doing to make sure that we have appropriate and equitable infrastructure investment? What are we doing to scaffold economic development, job creation in some of our hardest hit communities? What are we doing to work with the state to go after things such as the Liquor Control Act and also predatory lending legislation that allows for these types of businesses to descend on impoverished and disadvantaged communities? We have a lot of work to do. And I just want folks to know that we feel, right? I mean, these are our neighbors. These are our sons, our daughters. And it's frustrating to us as well. When the media releases go out that say that there's no public threat because the perpetrator knew the victim, that makes me madder than hell, I'll be honest with you. Because as somebody that witnessed a murder at Risdale Park at 14 years old, that is my neighborhood park, I can assure you that the perpetrator knew the victim, but everybody at that park was in harm's way. I can assure you that anybody, until that the perpetrator was apprehended, that anybody that came in contact with that individual was in harm's way, because that individual was in a panic, they were desperate. And I can assure you that as somebody that teaches, I have a student right now that lost both of their parents due to gun violence when they were a young person. We know what the data is with regards to kids that have lost parents or loved ones via gun violence. And I can promise you they're in danger because they're at risk now as well. And so I would actually ask our LPD, Mr. Bill Merritt, I would ask the mayor to maybe rethink the narrative, or I should say the messaging, and that until this individual is apprehended, they should be considered armed and dangerous. So with that being said, I think we on council have a lot of work to do, and collectively, I think we need to do as good of a job possibly in terms of interfacing and working with the mayor, and Mayor Shore, sorry. I would love to at some point have an update. We know that you had you convened a anti-gun task force in June. We know that some things have come from that with regards to trying to get illegal guns off the street. Obviously, we have begun channeling additional dollars to groups that are really trying to penetrate and get out in front of violent crime. But where are we at with some of these initiatives, and what is really the administrative approach moving forward to get after this in a holistic approach? But again, folks, just know that we're frustrated as well, and we're working, I promise. Thank you.
And Mr. President, before you move on, and Mr. Mayor, how the council can help. We need to be a part of that solution. And so, we can't stay in our silos any longer. We have got to work together to address this.
Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Hussein, for bringing up the holistic approach, because that is what we've been talking about for the last couple of months here, is how do we get at this from the front end as opposed to dealing with it on the back end. And I say this everywhere, that violence is a product of poverty and inequity, and violent crime stems from trauma untreated, and we do nothing. We do so little. And I understand that in the budgetary process, we've got $1.35 million going into human services, and at the same time we have almost $50 million going into police. And at some point, we have to determine where the money is going to come from in order to deal with, in order to prop, in order to support, in order to provide the resources that are needed on the front end to keep folks engaged. We have spent so much time, not just here at council, but everywhere across the country, defunding education, defunding after-school programs, defunding arts programs, defunding recreation and music programs, and all of the things that keep kids engaged. And right now, there's kids that are engaged, little kids engaged in vandalism because they're bored, they've got nothing to do, there's no programming in their local park, their local schools are closed down, there's nothing for them to do, there's no transportation to get them there. Parents are working 2 jobs, and so we really do have to start thinking about what proactively on the front end we are doing to change this entire wave, because it took a long time to get here, and it's going to take a long time to get us out, but it has to start somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, President Spatafor. Shifting gears a little bit, I do want to make just a couple of announcements about the upcoming city election. We do have absentee ballots going out later this week. By the time we get them in the mail on Thursday, we will pass the 13,000 mark of the number of ballots going out. So if you have signed up for a ballot, look for that to come in the mail. I would expect you would get it Saturday or Monday. If you still need to request a ballot, there is plenty of time to do that. So you can contact my office at 483-4131 or go to our website. And then I also want to announce that next week on Tuesday is National Voter Registration Day. We're still finalizing the details, but we will be doing an outreach event from my office to help get people registered to vote. And then in addition to that day, we will be on the Lansing Community College campus on Thursday, September 30th, from 10 until 2:30 outside the Arts and Sciences building to accommodate people needing to register to vote. We are to community event announcements. If anyone in the audience has a community event, we'll give you 1 minute to tell us the details.
Cemeteries has a dedication ceremony this Sunday at 3 p.m. in Mount Hope Cemetery to dedicate the monument to Peter J. Weller, which was recently restored and replaced where it belonged after being missing for an untold 100+ years. And also our Race to Restore 5K Run Walk is in Mount Hope Cemetery on Saturday, October 16th at 10 a.m. And you can register for that at runsignup.com. So Sunday this week at 3 in Mount Hope for the dedication, and Saturday, October 16th at 10 in Mount Hope for the race. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I will announce that we are closing in about 2 minutes. The speaker registration for public comment on legislative matters. That's the blue form, and it would include items 4 through 15 on the council agenda, although I would note that items 10, 11, and 12 are not going to be considered tonight, but you can still make public comment on them, so get that form in within the next 2 minutes to Ross in the back. It's the blue form, and with that, we're to the mayor's comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I guess I will take a minute to address the same topic as my council colleagues. I did sign the letter along with Lansing Township Supervisor DeAndre Hayes, Meridian Township Supervisor Ron Stika, the Township Supervisor Hayho in Delhi Township. I do believe that I think it's a mistake for the prosecutor to blanket say that she's not going to charge felony firearm to anybody. I believe that I signed that because I had victims' families come to me who were stunned. When I say victims, I mean victims from the black and brown community who were disproportionately affected by gun violence. And they came to me and they were shocked and stunned and very upset that the prosecutor would blanket say that she won't charge for this as a secondary crime if there's another crime. So I did sign that. I do believe that blanket policy tells criminals that they can bring a gun with them when they commit a crime. And that's what many of the elected officials believe. That being said, I agree with Councilwoman Dunbar that 2 years as a mandatory minimum and consecutive sentencing, which she didn't mention, but consecutive sentencing, that all needs to change. And I've had that conversation with Representative Anthony. She is in agreement, and that needs to change. This needs to be on a case-by-case basis, and it needs to be looked at for the crime and the situation. So I hope the legislature will make that change, and I hope they'll make it soon, because a mandatory minimum and a consecutive sentence for a felony firearm doesn't make any sense. So I will talk about that publicly. I'm happy to talk about that with any member of council. I've had a few of you call me to talk about this, and I appreciate that. I'm happy to talk to anybody who wants to give me a call, and I do appreciate the calls that I've received. I will add that while I am certainly supportive of the Advanced Peace Initiative, folks need to understand out there in our city that in talking to Mr. Bogan, that process is not going to bear fruit for more than a year. So we have problems now. And Councilman Hussein mentioned that the advanced peace process is a good one over time, over 3 years. But that's not going to start bearing fruit for at least a year. Now, I'm committed to that because I think it's a good process. But we need to do some action now, which is things that we have been doing. We have been putting millions of dollars into social services, multi-millions of dollars. We put just $13 million into rental and housing assistance. We have put money into all kinds of different social services. All the citizens out there, look in your mailbox. You got the Lansing Living Guide. There are hundreds of programs that we are putting on for our youth and for our seniors and for our residents through our Parks Department. We have $180,000, which this council passed not too long ago, that are going to go directly to programs that are doing things for our youth to keep them away from the bad situations. And that money is being worked through and given out by Delisa Fontaine and our neighborhoods department as we speak. We've already signed some contracts. So I'm proud of the work that we've done. I'm happy to have the conversation with this council and the public at any time. While I discuss that, I'd like to share some of the positive things that have happened in this city. I want to thank the wonderful folks at Tabernacle of David and Alpha Phi Alpha and the MSU Osteopathic for helping give out food at our mobile pantry. I was there for an hour and a half until the cars stopped on Saturday, talking to folks, asking about their situations, asking how they're doing, giving out food. Thank you to those volunteers that were there. They do tremendous work, and they have a system that gets cars through. People really appreciate the city coming through and giving them food when they need it. And it was just a sight to see, and I hope everybody will come out and help volunteer for our mobile food pantries, because that is really getting connected with the citizens of need. I also want to congratulate the good folks in Old Town for having an awesome Blues Fest. Talk about having activities to do, getting people out so they're not causing trouble, they're out having fun. It was free, and it was a chance to get out and hear some good music and really see other people. It was an awesome, awesome time. I also want to thank the great people who ran the Capital City River Run. Tons of people yesterday morning. We had hundreds and hundreds of people that were enjoying our downtown and our river trail. And it was fantastic. And I ran a 27-minute 5K, which was close to my personal best. I couldn't believe it. I want to congratulate the Everett High School and our Lansing school districts. They received the Special Olympics National Banner for Inclusion. They're one of something like 5 high schools in the country. They won it 6 months ago, and we were able to celebrate it late last week. And it was awesome. It was great. The kids got to come in and have an assembly and hear about the great things that they did. It really showed them the positivity of them focusing on inclusion. So thank you. I want to thank Representative Sarah Anthony. She and our police chief, Ellery Sosby, had a constituent hours on Wednesday where they talked about public safety in our city. So thank you to Representative Anthony. And then I want to share with everybody the excitement of non-motorized travel. We have opened up the East Side Connector, which is on the east side of the city, and it's an incredible way for people to get up and down a trail and get over to East Lansing and do it non-motorized, and people are thrilled. I've heard about it all over the city. And just today, we opened up the Bear Lake portion, 1.4-mile addition to our river trail in southeast Lansing, down by Forest View. So we have a lot going on. And I'm excited, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we are to public comment on.
Councilmember, yes? We're on. There's another comment period at the end. Let's keep it moving, please. Mr. Clerk.
We are to show cause hearings. We have a show cause hearing in consideration of orders to make safe or demolish to the owners of property at 4511 South Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and I don't believe anyone has signed in to speak on the show cause hearing. That would.
Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, President Spatafor. Before us, we have a property of 4511 South Martin Luther King. This property was red tagged on 12/7/2018. The estimated repairs for this property is $61,544. The estimated value of this property is $28,200. When this was before public safety, no one was there. No representative from the property was there. No permits have been pulled at this time, and that is this hearing. Thank you.
Okay, there being no members of the public, we can go ahead and do the referral of the show cause hearing.
Committee on Public Safety.
And now public comment on legislative matters. That does include, as I said before, items 4 through 15. Number 4 is a public hearing that I'll read in, is in consideration of an ordinance to establish an Arts and Culture Commission.
Vice President Hussein.
Sure. Just very quickly. So the mayor actually put together his mayoral Arts and Culture Commission back in 2018. I think they first began meeting sometime in September, October of that year. Since that time, that group, in conjunction with other groups such as the Greater Lansing Arts Council, they have really worked hard to foster and to support arts and culture throughout the city of Lansing. What this ordinance does, that is up for a public hearing today, is for the first time really codify and organize a arts and culture commission as a permanent recognized advisory board within the city of Lansing. The charge is quite broad. What they are going to do is work tremendously hard, I know, to, again, continue to foster and support culture and arts here in the city of Lansing. As written, the ordinance does call for a 12-member board, which would consist of 8 at-large members as well as 1 ward representative from each of the city's 4 wards. The terms, or I should say the years of service, would be 4 years, with the exception of some staggering in the beginning to ensure that we don't have this mass exodus of members from the body. We did have, last Monday, we had co-chair, I believe his name is Mike Marriott, in to discuss the work that the Mayoral Arts and Culture Commission has engaged in dating back to 2018, and the reason for this particular board being recommended for through this ordinance really as an advisory board to the city. And again, each member would be appointed by the mayor, and there would be advice and consent from the city council. So with that being said, this is the public hearing.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Okay, we have one person who has signed in, and that is Megan Martin.
Welcome.
I'm Megan Martin. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Greater Lansing, and I am just coming in support of the ordinance to establish the Arts and Culture Commission. I have been with the Arts Council since 2017, and it wasn't until recently that I became more familiar with the Arts and Culture Commission for the City of Lansing. And I just want to applaud the efforts that they've put forth to legitimize all of the individual artists, the festivals, the creatives, the arts and cultural organizations that we have here in the City of Lansing. And I wanted to come here and voice my support of this ordinance and answer any questions that I might be able to from the perspective of the Arts Council of Greater Lansing.
Thank you very much. Typically, council doesn't respond at public comment, so appreciate that. This will be back on the agenda October 11th for the Committee of the Whole.
All right, thank you. That being the last speaker, we are to the referral of the public hearing.
The Committee of the Whole.
Okay, we are to ordinances for passage. We have 3 that are for reconsideration, so they don't need to be read into the record, so we can go ahead to the Apartments West, and it's my understanding we need to reconsider, adopt, substitute draft number 4, and then revote. The council needs to re-adopt.
Yes, we had so much fun last week that we thought we'd do it again. Mr. Aboud's going to join us at the table here and explain what happened succinctly. And I think it's the same issue for all 3, or all 4 technically. Is that correct, Mr. Aboud?
Technically.
There we go.
Okay. Yes, technically it applies to all 4 of our pilot ordinances, the 3 that you considered last week and the Porter that is up for first consideration this week. And essentially what happened, making a long story short, is that these pilots were presented to us using our initial template by developers, and they had a reference to the prevailing wage section in our performance and our enforcement section under the duration clause, which you'll find on generally the 7th or 8th page of these pilots. The duration clause is, I think, section G in the pilot. That section, we had already done a separate Davis-Bacon letter agreement, so it did not need to be in there. MISTA, who had pre-approved all this language prior to council voting on it, then decided that that section relating to the prevailing wage ordinance was not something that they liked, And while they would have left our ordinance alone without a reconsideration, they would have docked the project's points. And so the projects wouldn't have been as competitive with the other projects around the state competing with MSHDA money. So that's why we're asking your reconsideration towards replacing those ordinances and without the language relating to the prevailing wage ordinance, which is unnecessary and is not necessary for our enforcement of the Davis-Bacon letter agreement, as well as some other redundant language. Subsequently, and this happened at the last minute, there were some discovered name changes, errors in the names, and that's why you have some late drafts that were submitted today, that there were some wrong names in the ordinance. It wasn't consistent all the way through. For that, we apologize. But overall, we now have language that MSHDA themselves have drafted. So they can't now say that we aren't going to approve the language we drafted. I mean, if they did, that would be, a bridge too far. But we're confident that this will get the development projects the most amount of consideration from MSHDA if they survive your consideration here.
Thank you.
And if you have any specific questions about any of this, I'm happy to answer them.
Appreciate that. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Aboud, for being so kind on the frantic phone call that you got from me last week about this whole thing. So I appreciate that, too. My concern or question is, these changes are not substantive changes that you feel they don't need to go back out. You don't feel that these changes are substantive changes?
That's correct. In reviewing this with the city attorney, with Brian McGrain's shop, we do not believe that these terms, that the changes that we made were significant or material to the ordinance. It doesn't change the percentage, the length of time, our ability to enforce our agreements, including the Davis-Bacon prevailing wage agreement. And for those reasons, we believe that this is a good, solid draft template and ordinances that we would approve as to form, and that we now know and believe that MSHDA will accord the proper amount of points to the projects here in Lansing.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to put that on the record that these are not substantive changes.
And the city attorney would like to respond as well.
So I thought long and hard about this issue. If this were just a public hearing, I didn't see where those changes would have required another public hearing. So the debate over the weekend was whether or not we actually had to redo this, and I think we opted for the conservative approach because there's so many millions of dollars and people's lives involved in this that we opted for a conservative approach to ask for your reconsideration.
Thank you. Councilmember Spitzley, I think a motion to reconsider the item would be in order.
Yep. I move for the reconsideration of the adoption of the payment in lieu of taxes for the Apartments West.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Councilmember Spitzley, we'll need a introduction
Yep,
of
I move the substitute for Apartments West. This substitute, in addition to the changes that Mr. Aboud has talked about, also makes the name change of the actual project consistent throughout. So with that, I'll move the resolution.
Very good. I want to be clear, we are moving the adoption of the substitute, not the final passage of the ordinance.
That is
just for
correct.
those voting. So all those in favor of adopting the substitute before the council, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Now we're on to the final passage. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. President, I move for
Stand
the...
by. Mr. Clerk, are you?
I'm ready to.
Okay, sorry. No, it sounded like you were going to say something. Go ahead,
Okay.
Councilmember Spitzley, sorry.
Mr. President, I move for the final adoption of the payment in lieu of taxes for the Apartments West project.
Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll.
On adoption of the ordinance, Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Garza. Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
No.
6 yeas, 1 nay. The ordinance is adopted.
Councilmember
Please.
Spitzley, would you like immediate effect?
Yes, so I move for immediate effect.
There's a motion for immediate effect. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, immediate effect is ordered.
And our next is the Walter French pilot.
Mr. President, I move for reconsideration of the payment in lieu of taxes for the Walter French project.
It's a proper motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the substitute for the Walter French, and that includes the language that Mr. Aboud mentioned, the removal of that particular language.
On the question of the adoption of the substitute, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. The substitute is adopted. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the substitute for the Walter French project.
Just to be clear, you're moving the final passage of the
The
ordinance?
final passage of the ordinance for the, as amended, for the Walter French project.
That is a proper motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley. Councilmember Wood.
Yes.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays, the ordinance is adopted.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for reconsideration of the payment in lieu of taxes for the Cedar Place.
Sorry, Councilmember Spitzley, would you like immediate effect on the previous?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. I move for immediate effect.
Immediate effect has
Apologies.
been requested. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, immediate effect is so ordered. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for reconsideration of the payment in lieu of taxes for the Cedar Place Apartments.
There's proper motion. All those in favor of reconsideration of the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, thank you. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the substitute of the Cedar Place Apartments, a payment of lieu of taxes, Cedar Place Apartments. The language was changed as discussed by City Attorney Mr. Aboud.
That is a proper motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the substitute is adopted. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for final passage of the ordinance for payment in lieu of taxes for the Cedar Place Apartments.
That is a proper motion. Any further?
As amended.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, if the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Hussein.
Yes.
Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley.
Yes.
Councilmember Wood.
No.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar. 6 yeas, 1 nay, the ordinance is adopted.
Councilmember Spitzley, are you requesting immediate effect?
Move for immediate effect.
Immediate effect has been requested. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, immediate effect is so ordered. Councilmember Spitzley, we do have draft 5.
I have to read this one.
Oh, gotcha.
This one had not been passed before, so I will read into the record. We have an ordinance of the City of Lansing, Michigan to amend the Lansing Codified Ordinances by adding a new section 884 for the purposes of providing for an extension of a service charge in lieu of taxes for 98 low-income elderly dwelling units in a project known as the Porter pursuant to the provisions of the State Housing Development Authority Act of 1966 as amended, is read a second time by its title. The ordinance was reported from the Committee on Development and Planning and is on the order of immediate passage.
Thank you, Councilmember Spitzley. Draft 5 is sitting in front of us, so we will first need the adoption of a substitute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of the substitute of draft. Is it draft number 5?
It would be 5, yes, ma'am.
Draft number 5 of the ordinance payment in lieu of taxes for the Porter.
That is a proper motion. All those in favor of adoption of the substitute, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the substitute is properly before us. Councilmember Spitzley.
Thank you, Mr. President. What we have before us is an ordinance that has been a substitute for a pilot, a 4% pilot for 40 years for the Porter House Apartments. This is submitted by Redwood Housing Partners, who've owned the apartment complex since May, I believe. The Porter Apartments is 98 one-bedroom units designated as affordable housing for the elderly. The project proposes $9,373 in repairs and replacement. The Porterhouse right now is in the last year of an existing pilot. They are proposing to another 40-year pilot at 4%. It is estimated that the projected new pilot would bring $46,594 to the city of Lansing. The current pilot service fee is $24,945. This is being heard this week as opposed to last week because there was an issue with signage of the, or disagreement, not a disagreement, but a misunderstanding of the signing of the, signing of the prevailing wage document. It is my understanding that it has now been signed, and with that, I will move the resolution. I apologize, I lost it for a minute there.
That's all right. The ordinance has been properly moved. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, if the clerk would please call the roll.
Councilmember Jackson. Councilmember Spatafor.
Yes.
Councilmember Spitzley. Councilmember Wood.
No.
Councilmember Betts.
Yes.
Councilmember Dunbar. Councilmember Hussein.
No.
5 yeas, 2 nays, the ordinance is adopted.
Would you like immediate effect? It's a 5-vote issue. Immediate effect has been requested. All those in favor of immediate effect, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. I only heard one nay. Should we do a roll call? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Immediate effect is ordered.
About that, okay, we are to consent agenda.
Anyone wishing to pull anything from the consent agenda? Mr. Vice President.
Sure, so we have one item tonight on the consent agenda, setting a public hearing in consideration of a noise special permit. This is an MDOT request to allow for I-496 freeway reconstruction on weekdays from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. and any time on weekdays, weekends, or holidays for the period January 24th, 2022 through December 1st, 2022, and for the period March 1st, 2023 through November 15th, 2023. That said, I'd move the consent agenda.
Consent agenda is moved. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries.
And we are to resolutions for action. We have the budget priorities.
Mr. Vice President.
Okay, I promise that I won't read every single bullet point here. So this is actually something that we do each year. By charter, this council is required to put forth a statement of priorities and policies to the mayor by October 1st. The spirit of the charter, or I should say this addition within the charter, is that the mayor and his department heads, as they build the budget, they will actually take a look at this and in earnest work to try and incorporate as much as possible. By the end of March, I believe it's the fourth Monday in March or before, the mayor will kick over a recommended executive budget to us with a statement of their efforts, the administration's efforts to actually include these budget priorities within that budget. There is, again, with regard to that statement, there's supposed to be rationale for those items that were not included that he puts forth essentially in that statement. We then have until the third Monday in May to pass a budget. We've had a lot of conversations, I think, over the last couple of weeks about these priorities, the budgets that have been passed prior, obviously, to this next cycle. And I just want to remind folks on this council that ultimately, with a supermajority vote, we retain nearly complete control over that budget. So with that being said, there was one item in the committee of the whole that was stricken. So on the second page, under the be it further resolved from the Committee on Development and Planning, number 5, that dealt with the LEAP subsidy of $500,000 and the facade improvement grant $50,000 line item that was stricken. The balance of that is actually included in other aspects of these priorities. So with that being said, I would move the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we have the Distressed Cities, Villages, and Townships grant.
Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, President Spatafor, what we have before us is a grant that we received from the state. We had applied for this grant for $330,000. This was to help offset, or to, I should say, pay for the cost of switching with our IT system. What we were actually awarded was $30,000. What we will continue to do is see if we can get some additional funds from the state. If not, then the additional money to pay for the IT improvements would come out of the IT Capital Improvement Fund. So with that, I would move the approval of accepting this grant from the state for $30,000.
There's a proper motion. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, we are to speaker registration for public comment on city government-related matters. That is the yellow form in the back. If you wish to address city council, you need to turn in the yellow form within the next 2 minutes to Ross in the back. And in the meantime, we are to reports of city officers, boards, and commissions.
Mr. Vice President.
Sure, I would move that all items be considered as read in full and that the appropriate referrals be made by you, President Spatafor.
With pleasure. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Clerk.
We have one item from the city clerk, minutes of boards, commissions, and authorities.
Placed on file, please.
And we are to motion of excused absence.
Councilmember Spitzley.
I move to excuse Councilmember Garza.
There's proper motion. All those in favor of excusing Councilmember Garza from this evening's meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All is opposed? Excused absence is ordered.
And we are to remarks by council members.
Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. I would just like to take this time to formally request an update on the federal stimulus money and just what our plans are and what the guiding principles are and how much is left, just since it's so important and we don't really hear too much about it. Just for everybody's sake, if we can schedule that sometime whenever it fits our schedule.
I will take that formal request, and we'll make sure it gets onto a committee of the whole agenda for you, Councilmember Jackson. I know we're due tranche 2 in like January, so we'll have some discussions then. So, all right, Councilmember Dunbar.
Thank you. With regard to the comment made earlier about advanced peace not being able to start until next year, I wanted to clarify that the RFP scoring committee, made up of county and city officials, which included our own Nick Tate, unanimously awarded the Village of Lansing the advanced peace contract. And the committee referred that recommendation to the Board of Commissioners, including comments that the village got that RFP because they are uniquely qualified and already doing the work. So the time frame that is in the contract that would be needed to identify a cohort of fellows, we don't need that because the cohort has already been identified by the folks that are on the ground doing the work. There's no need to take the time to train and recruit neighborhood change agents because folks at the village, again, are already doing the work. They've already been involved in communication with folks that have been shot in the city, that are involved in the shooting, that they probably know more about who is involved than anyone, and they're doing hospital-based visits with victims and families to get to the bottom of this. So I just want to say that the faster that this gets off the ground, the more resources that they will have to do the work, but they are already doing the work. Thank you.
Councilmember Spitzley, then Wood.
So I guess I didn't hear that the RFP had already been issued. Is that accurate?
The so the RFP went out. I think that there had been a recommendation for funding, but I don't know that that's been approved by the county commission yet. Yep. Councilmembers Wood.
I just wanted to add, as part of Ways and Means, Councilmember Jackson, we did ask for an accounting on the stimulus dollars for our upcoming Ways and Means meeting. I'll be glad to make sure that you're aware of when that meeting is, so that if you'd like to participate, you can. And we can also ask that work with the president who's on the committee to see if we can have a briefing as well at committee of a whole.
Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Any other comments? Okay, before we move on, I just want to thank our office staff, Sherry, the law office, Barb Kimmel, and ED&P, and basically anyone else who had a hand in this. And thank you all for your graciousness on this matter of all these pilots coming back to us. That, it was out of our hands. It was Mishta's fault. But I appreciate your indulgence in getting this taken care of this evening. With that, I'll move on, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, we are to public comment, and we have one speaker, and that's Larry Hutchins.
You skipped over.
What did I skip over? Oh, the mayor. I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, do you have anything
Comments by the mayor.
anything to add, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, we're happy to certainly provide an accounting for the federal funding. I will for Councilman Jackson and everyone else. We put all that in the budget, and I'll remind everybody we got $50 million in federal funding over 2 years, and the first $25 million has been allocated through the budget process. The second $25 million will not be allocated to the city for another year, and we will not be putting forward any proposals until we know how much of our income tax is going to be affected, because first and foremost, we plan to backfill whatever we need for our income tax. So we will continue to monitor that. We expect to have that by the end of the year. And then we will put forward proposals and work with council on their priorities for funding, but the first half is spent. I know everybody thinks that we have this pile of gold, but we don't. The first half is spent. The second half, we certainly look forward to being able to utilize a little bit further because hopefully we're taking in more income tax than we did. In terms of advance piece, perhaps I misspoke, and if I did, I apologize. But what I said was the impacts will not be felt for at least a year, according to Devon Bogan, who is the founder. That was my comment. That was what he had relayed to me and Delisa Fontaine and Nick Tate when we met. So my comment was that we can't expect an immediate impact because it will take about a year. That was the experience they had. It takes about 3 years to effectively implement the program and see real results, and that's what they saw in other communities. So he said that's not going to happen for a year, and that was the comment that I thought I made, and if I misrepresented that, my apologies, but we won't truly see those impacts for a year, so we need to do work before that, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk.
Okay, we have Larry Hutchinson.
Just a reminder, you have 3 minutes. If you could use the podium, you have 3 minutes, and the council does not typically respond to public comment.
Thank you. Honorable Council, I rise and extend to myself as much time as I may consume to extend and revise my remarks. I am here to report a rape. My name is Larry Hutchinson, third-party candidate for governor of Michigan. Mr. President, I rise, and I have given the clerk, the city secretary, a couple of exhibits, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A is a op-ed that I wrote, that I was asked to write, 800 words. And don't worry about the words because, don't worry about the content right now. But it says here in the little box there, I don't know who wrote that, but it says, due to the threatening nature of the comments, including in this column, the Lansing Police Department, was notified of its existence and Mr. Hutchinson's invitation to attend a joint mayoral debate sponsored by Fox 47 and City Pulse on June 24th has been revoked. Now, before we get into all of that, It says the Lansing Police Department was notified. Shouldn't that be were notified? But, and shouldn't that be the Lansing City Post? But, no one will tell me what it is that was so threatening in this article that I wrote that would preclude Mr. Hutchinson from being banned from a debate. Seeing that there was a president who bragged about grabbing women by the vagina, and he was allowed to debate. Now, there's also an article, an interview I did with NPR, who I thought would be impartial and would do due diligence, but they took this article and said, Mr. Hutchinson was banned from the debate for threatening other candidates. Where? Who? What is it in this article that I said that was so threatening? So I'm asking the council, please investigate this. And also, the article they wrote about me with the driving dispute, the car was red and not, the car was orange and not red. I don't know what they had going on in the background, maybe some horses. I don't know, but they got it wrong. So please, pretty please, with sugar on top, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hutchison. At 8:18, the Lansing City Council is adjourned, and we will see you all next time, hopefully at City Hall.